Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to the final council meeting of 2025, which is the December Cabinet meeting. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assembly in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls while the meeting is in progress. Please note the meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will subsequently be available on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No. Following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 5, Councillor Austin. Item 6, Councillors Davis, Cup and Austin. Item 7, Councillors Bayford, Cup and Austin. Item 8, Councillor Austin. Item 9, Councillors Fellows, Davis, Rogers, Cup and Austin. Item 10, Councillor Davis and Councillor Austin. Item 12, Councillors Davis and Austin. Are there any more members requesting to speak?
Should be on item 6 as well.
Okay. Oh, you are, yeah, it's my mistake. Just because you got in early and your name's printed there. No, we saw the ones that are written in by Charles. Okay. Cabinet is all here, so we don't have any apologies. Declarations of interest. Does anyone else have any declarations of interest this evening? No? I have a declaration of interest in item 12. As I'm a member of the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board, I will vacate the chair for that item and Councillor Duckworth will introduce it. Minutes of the extraordinary meeting to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the extraordinary meeting on the 20th of November. Copies attached to the agenda. I propose to take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Alban, thank you. Members agree? Thank you. Summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting on the 27th of November. Copy attached. Propose to take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duckworth. Members agree? Thank you. And the first substantive item is High Street rental auctions designated areas. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Leader. Just bear with me one moment. This report proposes the designation of high street rental areas in Margate, Cliftonville and Ramsgate. The proposal utilises new high street rental auction legislation which grants the council the power to auction the rental rights of commercial properties that have been persistently vacant for over a year. The primary objective is to address long-term vacancies, revitalise our town centres and support the local economy by helping small businesses and community groups access empty units. The selection of these specific areas was driven by data from the Council's annual monitoring report, which identified vacancy rates consistently above 8% in these three locations, which is the qualifying factor to apply the legislation. Following a positive public engagement exercise, we have also amended the recommendation to expand the Ramsgate designated area to include the junction up to Chatham Street. The next step is to apply for funding to compile a current vacancy register from MHCLG. We can then proceed to the implementation phase. I move that Cabinet approves the proposed High Street designated areas in Margate, Cliftonville and Ramsgate as areas where High Street rental auction legislation will be applicable.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Keane. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Duckworth. This is an excellent scheme. Really pleased to see this coming forward. I've just got a couple of questions. The first one is timescales, how we think that this is likely to pan out, and obviously I realise there are a lot of unknowns in there, but how long we think before we might be able to get the first property dealt with, and also about capacity, knowing that the property team is overstretched and has a great deal to do. What officer capacity do we have to deal with this, and are we going to set any kind of a limit on the number of properties we're dealing with, or how will we prioritise those properties as we go along? Thank you.
Councillor Duckworth.
Yes, we do get a small amount of funding in terms of capacity. I think, but The officer will confirm that we were aiming for 5 a year, and also if I can ask Ms Plant to, I'm not really quite sure the exact when we'd be able to do the first one. I do know we've got, so we've looked at historic vacancies, and I do know we need to find out what the current situation is, so that'll be the first step before we can do anything.
Do you want to come in, Ms Plant?
Yes, thank you very much. Certainly. So in terms of timescales for application for the first property, I'm not able to commit to a specific timescale because we are dependent on the MHLG award of funding under the new burdens to create the vacancy register. What I can say, the vacancy register will take circa 6 weeks to create, and we should have it within 6 weeks from approval of funding. That will give us the priority list of properties to be tackled first based on the longest properties that have been empty for the longest period of time within the primary frontage. They will be the ones that we will be looking at first to make the biggest impact.
Thank you. Members, any comments? Councillor Bright?
I fully support this, Leader. I took a walk down North Down Road a few weeks ago. I normally just drive down there, and it's remarkable just how quickly places can be turned around. There's despite a number of empty properties, those properties that are full, there's a really good variety of places to eat, places to drink, and hang out. And I think, you know, added towards the progress we're making with the rest of our regeneration efforts, which are mostly obviously capital programs, it's great to see that sort of spread out. And I think this initiative adds on to that. So congratulations, Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you. Members, anything else? Okay, let's be moved to. Is that agreed? Thank you. And we move on to item 6, which is asset management disposal of surplus property. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Leader. This report seeks Cabinet approval for the disposal of 9 surplus assets across the district, ranging from small parcels of land to structures like the Palace Cinema and the Edwardian Lift. These properties have been identified as surplus to requirements, and retaining them continues to drain council resources through maintenance costs, management time and potential safety risks. Strategically, these disposals are essential to our medium-term financial plan, which requires a minimum annual capital receipts, which runs in the millions, to fund our wider capital programme. By converting these underperforming assets into capital, we can directly reinvest in the critical operational buildings and statutory services that our residents rely on. The report recommends an approach that is tailored to each site, whether that involves supporting local operators through private treaty sales, utilising open market auctions to ensure best value under Section 123, or applying restrictive covenants to protect heritage assets like the Edwardian Lift. This will reduce our liability and mitigate risks of antisocial behaviour at vacant sites. Ultimately, these disposals represent prudent financial management. They transform underperforming land into active capital, reduce our risk exposure and allow us to focus our limited resources on the assets that matter most to the people of Thanet. I move that Cabinet approves the disposal of the various assets listed in the report.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Alban, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to speak on particularly on this item on Annex 5, which is the proposed sale of Rossetti Gardens in Birchington. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, as I'm sure you all know, helped found the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood and was a world-renowned artist. And he also wrote poetry. I'm not going to recite any, don't I? He's also a very important figure in Birchington's history. Margate pays a lot of homage to the artist Turner, but Rossetti is equally as important in the arts world. He's largely overlooked by this council, but we have many Rossetti fans from all over the world who visit our village on their Rossetti pilgrimage. All Saints Church in Birchington is the resting place of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, whose grave is marked in the churchyard with a Celtic cross. This cross was designed by Ford Maddox Brown. In the village church, you'll see a memorial stained glass window. This window incorporates Dante's unfinished painting of the Passover in the Holy Family. Our village is also home to Rossetti Road as a commemoration. Also in our village is a memorial garden, Rossetti Gardens, another tribute to this major artist. Here you will find an obelisk and a plinth donated by the Rossetti Society. This is a notable feature for our visitors who come to pay their respects to this much respected artist, and is the first stop as visitors arrive at the village railway station. If Cabinet decide tonight that Rossetti Gardens is surplus to TDC, then this should be given to Birchington Parish Council to become the guardians of it, and not simply put up for sale to the highest bidder, which it then could possibly become the permanent beer garden to the neighbouring pub, or developed in the future if the pub ceases to trade. Birchington Parish Council have pursued the transfer of Rossetti Gardens previously, both pre and post-COVID. They did agree heads of terms and indeed agree a nominal price, but with personnel changes and shortage at TDC, this went on TDC's back burner and finally stalled last year when we were told it's now not up for sale. I'd also like to express my disappointment that the Parish Council only heard of this new attempt to dispose of Rossetti Gardens through a Cathy Bowles news report last weekend. There was no consultation or contact from TDC whatsoever. Whilst we understand this decision tonight is the start of the disposal process again, a Parish Council does need time to prepare and raise any necessary funds that may be required. As we were so far down the transfer process previously, some simple contact could have been made to make us aware that this was back on the disposal list again, as we have now got to go through a whole other decision-making process ourselves. So I ask tonight that Cabinet note the importance of this memorial garden and that we show respect that it deserves. And the recommendation is made so that it's transferred to Birchington Parish Council at its earliest opportunity at the terms previously agreed and taken off the for sale list so that Birchington Parish Council can become the guardians of Rossetti Gardens in perpetuity and it's kept for visitors to enjoy. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Fellows, just before I call Councillor Duckworth in, we're not making a decision tonight as to whom Rossetti Gardens should be disposed. We're agreeing to approve the principle of it being disposed. So I just think we need to be clear about that. Now I'll bring in Councillor Duckworth.
Well, yeah, exactly, and we need to be fair to all interested parties. We don't know who they are yet. I don't know if Ms Plant's got anything to add to that.
Yeah, certainly. So the Cabinet does acknowledge the importance of Rossetti Gardens. It acknowledges the obelisk. It acknowledges the heritage for the site, which is why the report mentions the two immediately interested parties, which is the current tenant, which is Christie's Wine Bar, which they operate from the site. They've had a presence there for many years and they have showed an interest. It also acknowledges that Birchington Parish Council did express an interest, but this was back in 2019. We can no longer withhold terms that were agreed so long ago on the current modern terms because the difference in time is significant, which changes the value of the land as the rental for the land has changed since 2019 to today's date.
I don't think you can, Councillor Fellows, in view of the agenda, but what I will say is we've heard what you've said, we've heard what the Parish Council said at the Parish Forum, and no doubt we'll have further discussions. All we're doing tonight is agreeing the principle that it can be disposed of, but there will be conversations, including with the officer and with the Cabinet member. And I'm sure that you'll want to give your views as part of those discussions. Thanks. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's to be welcome because obviously it tidies up a few little headache areas and so on and so forth and clarifies it. In terms of revenue raising, obviously there's targets that officers have got to hit and all the rest of it. I can't help but note there's nothing huge here. We do have approaches from private individuals looking to invest in the area, and as I say, I do hope that all approaches are being given equal credibility if the money's there. However, the specific question I had on this list was, and I'm pleased to see the Edwardian lift and kiosk is on there. Given that the cafe hasn't been opening the kiosk for, well, since the lift packed up, I noticed it said the report says that the lease is being renegotiated. Firstly, does it make sense to renegotiate a lease if the thing's being disposed of as a whole and they're inextricably linked? And the other question I have is, several years ago, £50,000 compensation from Southern Water was allocated towards repairs for this lift. And it was the 100,000 that the former leader and the MP had negotiated with them, 50,000 to Margate, 50,000 for the lift in Ramsgate, specifically stated. Is that obviously still available to support the renovation of the lift?
Might be a bit unfair to pass that one to Councillor Duckworth, but do you want to comment on?
Yeah, it's planned. I don't have any comments now.
Do you have any comments? No, I mean, I am aware of that 50,000. I think we'll get back to you on where it currently is, because I don't think I'm in a position to comment tonight, but I don't think you should assume that it's disappeared.
I'm not, I'm just confirming that it, because it was ring fenced.
But we don't have as we don't have a finance officer here, I think it would probably be better to get finance to come up with a response. Obviously, I'm very interested and always have been very interested in the future of that lift. And I think all of us want to see the lift brought back into operation, but it needs to be in a sustainable form. There has to be some way of funding its ongoing operation as well as the repairs to it. But I believe I said to Councillor Austin at a council meeting a couple of months ago that one of the things that would happen under this administration is that lift would resume, and that remains my position. I'm not quite sure it matters over much who owns it when it does resume, as long as it's open as a lift. Yeah.
Having had, if I can just finish, having had a couple of approaches and spoken with a couple of private businesses that would be keen to invest and look at that as a commercial opportunity, actually, I'll make sure they come forward to you for discussion.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Leader. And whilst I do sympathise with the position the council is in disposing these assets, I do fear whether or not we are potentially being short-minded rather than looking to the future of what these assets and the value that they may hold. So I would just like to ask whether the Cabinet is confident that the best value of these assets are and will be guaranteed to ensure that the decision that is being made tonight is actually for the benefit of the council. But equally, I think it's important that if it can, where has there been the financial weigh up of some of these community assets that are seeking to be disposed on this list, whether actually the community aspects of those has been weighed up against the financial aspects of actually, by keeping it almost in-house, is it more beneficial for us to keep those services, keep those assets within the council for future investment, and also to ensure those services carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cupp. Councillor Duckworth.
Yeah, there's no reason why, because something is disposed of, it doesn't continue to have value to the community, and it's something we can take into consideration. Again, we're kind of jumping the gun a bit. We're agreeing to dispose of these assets, and as I've said, yeah, we can take community things into consideration.
I think on the whole these are quite small items, one or two exceptions, that really is a tidying up exercise, and whilst there is some revenue to be raised, I think there's also the question of why does the council own them, and in one or two cases it's not at all clear why the council would want to continue to own them. So in that sense, if there are other people who can make better use of the land for the community or even for themselves, then perhaps we need to be looking at that. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Duckworth. I just wanted to pick up really on what Councillor Fellows said about relationship with Town Council, Parish Council, and what Councillor Davis said about the Edwardian lift. My understanding, and Councillor Alban will put me right if I've remembered this wrong, was that Ramsgate Town Council had some discussions with Thanet Street Council about possibly taking over the lift, and at that stage the kiosk was not included, which meant that there was not a potential income to link to the asset. Am I right in thinking that the kiosk now is definitely included, because that changes the proposition completely? The other thing I wanted to say was both the Palace Cinema and the Edwardian lift are much loved community assets of great heritage value. It's good to see their heritage aspects being protected there, and I do hope we can find suitable guardians for both those assets, because they both contribute in their very different ways to amenity for the community. Thank you.
Yes, it does include the lift, the Edwardian lift and kiosk, and I agree with you. I don't know too much about the Edwardian lift, but I do visit the Palace Cinema, and I agree with you on that aspect.
I think that the reason that the kiosk has been is there as part of the lift is that everyone recognises there has to be a means of funding the operation of the lift in the future, and in order to facilitate a discussion with Ramsgate Town Council or anyone else, they both need to be on the disposal list, and that's really where we're coming from. Members, Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just come back on or add to Councillor Cupp's point that he made about the value and assets being surplus to requirements. I think just because they're surplus to requirements to this council, it doesn't mean that this council doesn't value them. And I wanted to speak in particular reference to the Palace Cinema. Like Councillor Duckworth, I visit the cinema regularly. And I think what we're doing here is we're safeguarding that heritage by working with the current leaseholder, who I've met them a number of times, and they've done a fantastic job in creating not just they don't just run the usual films, they run a really unique programme of performances, shows, and they host community events. I think they've done a great job. And I think if we know what's happened at Kent, we know the value that they give to valuable community assets, in that they don't care and they don't protect them going forward. They'll just sell them to the highest bidder if they can. The fact that we are working with the current leaseholder, we are safeguarding that for the future. I think that's really to be welcomed. And also, Dante Rossetti's sister Christina wrote my favourite poem, Councillor Fellows. You'd be interested to know.
Please don't read it out, Councillor Bright, or recite it from memory. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to come back to about the lift. You know, as the chair of Ramsgate Town Council for the last 4 or 5 years, I can say that the Town Council was looking to take this lift over probably since 2020. And before Miss Plant was in charge, there were a number of stumbling blocks with it. We did ask, from Ramsgate Town Council, did ask for the concession because that is a main part of it, to be able to, if the Town Council was to take it over. The Town Council decided not to pursue it because of the cost, and which is significant, and it being a Grade 2 listed structure. But I can also say that I was contacted as the chair of Ramsgate Town Council by local business people, and they also asked me to put their names forward, which I did to Miss Plant. But as the leaders just said, this has to go on the asset disposal list, and then it's open for anybody to come in with a bid on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more? Okay, members, that's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 7, land at Shottendane Road. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. Tonight, Cabinet is being asked to agree to fully consider the findings of the public consultation about the proposals for the land at Shottendane Road, as detailed in Annex 3, to direct the local plan CAG to include land for gypsy and traveller accommodation within the site assessments for the next local plan iteration, and to advise about an appropriate threshold above which all sites will be required to set aside land for gypsy and traveller provision. In line with Recommendation 1, in the event that the land at Shottendane Road is allocated for residential development in the local plan, include provision for gypsy and traveller pitches within the site master plan, in a way that addresses the relevant planning concerns raised during the consultation wherever possible. We are asked to note the update in relation to the North Thanet Link Road set out in Section 5, and continue to contact central government in relation to the requirement for further national funding for gypsy and traveller provision. As a council, we are absolutely committed to ensuring that we provide high-quality, suitable homes for everyone in our community. We want to ensure that gypsy and traveller provision is part of planning for our whole community, with the high-quality design and facilities that all of our residents deserve, and this decision sets out our future strategy for truly community-based provision. This has been an urgently required area of provision for many years now, and many approaches have been taken. Just in the time that I have been a councillor, that has included our administration looking at all available council sites, a cross-party group assessing all sites, a bid being made for funding but turned down due to lack of planning permission on the Shottendane site, a call for external sites, and now our commitment to work to enshrine gypsy and traveller provision within our local plan to ensure multi-site provision for the needs identified within our assessment. The report published in 2019 identified the need for 12 pitches, 7 permanent and 5 transit in the district by 2031. As well as including provision in the next local plan, the current local plan provides for planning applications for pitches to be determined against a range of criteria. As discussed earlier, the Council has previously conducted an exhaustive search of sites. Has previously conducted an exhaustive search of sites and its ownership against these criteria, and the land at Shottendane Road best matched the policy criteria, which is why the site was progressed, having been entered as a suitable site for a funding bid previously. As listed, the report to Cabinet is therefore recommending that Cabinet direct the Local Plan Cabinet Advisory Group to explore the option to require all large housing sites to set aside some land for gypsy and traveller needs to ensure that our planning for all is cohesive, comprehensive and community-centred. The Cabinet Advisory Group will be asked to advise on the thresholds for this in a way that best fulfils the duties of the Council, the viability of future housing and the needs of the community, and then make recommendations back to Cabinet. Whether this future requirement includes Shottendane Road or not will depend on whether it is included in the next local plan or not, having previously been entered into the call for sites, and also depends on what thresholds are determined by the CAG. Approaching it in this way would enable the Council to address the concerns raised in the previous consultation by properly integrating any potential proposal into master planning for the site. I want to be very clear that this provision is and should always be viewed as simply part of our housing obligations as a council. A huge amount of work has gone into these recommendations and ensuring that we provide what we should always have been providing for a protected group, with significant contributions from gypsy and traveller representatives and residents. And I thank everyone who has worked in such a committed manner across what has been a very long and exceptionally important process. I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Alban. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Leader, and Councillor Whitehead for the report. It seems that finally, the plan to include gypsy and traveller provision on sizeable new developments is the only possible ongoing solution, as it's clear that following consultation there is greater opposition than support for provision elsewhere. I'm interested to know how the gypsy and travellers view this proposal and to ask what kind of incentives you think developers will require in order to participate in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. We've had 2 meetings with Gypsy and Traveller Coalition representatives since the recommendations were formalised, one informal and one formal meeting. The recommendations have been received very favourably and with support due to previous work with travellers who were at that point located on the port. Councillor Austin was present for that discussion, so I think can back me up on that point. So we're very much in a position of support in terms of the Gypsy and Traveller Coalition representatives. In terms of developers, to be perfectly honest, I think it's the duty of developers to provide for everyone within the community. I don't think that this is a particular exception. I think that, as I said in the last part of my introduction, this is part of what we should always do as housing. We provide for everybody. And I think doing what we require, especially in terms of social housing and affordable housing provision, should be part of the contract that developers understand and undertake when they work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for this report. I think it is it is welcome to see that this is moving forward under the local plan title, and to ensure that there is a plan across the district in that sense. And I definitely think it was, when I was on Ovian Scrutiny, it was not exactly what we were saying, but I think this approach is definitely welcome and almost in line with what Ovian Scrutiny were saying at the time. I suppose my concern around this is we have seen the consultation, the feedback from residents when it came to Shottendane, and whether we agree or disagree with the sentiment that was said by residents, there is obviously a certain feeling there. And I do sympathise with some of that feeling. But if we are to go forward under the local plan umbrella, when it comes to consultation, when it comes to ensuring that residents' voices are still heard in how these applications come forward, what almost mitigations, if you like, are going to be in place to ensure that if a plan comes forward with however many 100 homes with the side of a traveller site and gypsy site, would that just follow the same process of the normal planning process that we currently have, where residents would just have to comment on how it is, and obviously when the local plan comes out, that would have to go through the process as well. Is there any way in which that we can look at our statement of community involvement, which is obviously a requirement that tells developers how they can and how they should engage with residents, whether we can look at if there's a further way to engage with residents on potentially a sensitive subject like this that would be on certain developments. Appreciate you might not be able to give a full answer tonight, but if that could maybe be taken forward to the CAG, I would be appreciative. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Cupp. Referring back to your comment regarding OSP, I was present at OSP so that I could answer questions if anyone needed. It was a bit puzzling to see these recommendations referred to as by some members as something that had come forward from OSP, because as you mentioned, there were some similar recommendations, but this was definitely not what was recommended by OSP at that point. And I think it's particularly important because it enshrines this within the local plan, and it ensures that we are looking at an integrated approach to community building rather than having to look for individual sites that best fit planning needs. As you said, we would be looking at master plans for each site that came forward. I don't, to be honest, as I said, I see the provision as housing as a holistic issue. This is a protected group, and to my mind, it would be very strange to single them out as a group who needed special observation within the planning system. But it would be entirely correct to say that any master plan for any site coming forward would go through the same planning process. Residents could make comments as before. I'm always happy to look at other ways of involving residents in terms of community involvement. I definitely wouldn't be in support of an approach that was simply based on this is a provision for gypsy and travellers, therefore requires more scrutiny, because I don't think that's how this should work. I think there were valid issues brought forward from the previous consultation, mainly around access to the site, some of which have now been hopefully addressed via the North Thanet Link Road and potential different access that way. But I think it's really important to make that differential decision between issues that are genuinely a planning concern and a genuine concern for the process, and issues that could potentially just be furthering prejudice towards a particular community. I hope that answers some of it. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Whitehead. As you know, I and my group are thoroughly supportive of this. It's a really good step forward, and I'd like to congratulate you and officers on having built up such a good relationship after a very tricky start with the Traveller Alliance in particular. I think it's really important that we think in terms of providing, as you've said, for everybody's needs through our housing policy. And that might be providing sheltered housing for older people. It might be providing disability facilities for those people who need them and whatever. It might be providing pitches for gypsies and travellers, or indeed for new age travellers, like the ones who've been living permanently at the bottom of my street for I don't know how long. All those people have a right to somewhere to live, and if they are living in Thanet, we should be looking to provide for them. In the case of the private travellers that we've been working with for so long, they've been here a great deal longer than I have. Their grandparents were here. Officers have seen their children grow up, etc. They have a long, long history in Thanet, and they have every right to be here. And just because they're not choosing to be in bricks and mortar housing does not reduce that right in any way. I think it's really positive that we have taken on board local feeling and residents' responses, particularly in terms of things like safety. Caxton Road is a bit of a nightmare road. We really don't need much more traffic along there, etc. But I am very concerned about the level of fear and prejudice and misunderstanding, the number of residents who think we're going to provide this for free. And I'm afraid some of this is stoked by current political right-wing rhetoric out there that doesn't just relate to gypsies and travellers, and it's extremely unhelpful for community relations generally. And I don't think we should be having to work in those circumstances. I think this proposal does a very good job, and I'd like to congratulate you on it, and it has our full support.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. As you'll know from my previous contributions on this, I think that we do have a very long way to go in terms of tackling prejudice within our country and within our community as a whole. Again, that has no bearing on valid planning issues, but I think I would not be fulfilling my duty as a councillor if I didn't point out that, especially in social media discussions around this, I have seen some of the most appalling language used around and directed at gypsies and travellers. And it's been, I know, a very upsetting process for many in that community who have witnessed some of this. I think as well, we also need to consider the wider community in terms of the gypsy and traveller community, and that one of the particularly pleasing things about the consultation was the number of contacts that I had from residents who very much want to be living within a gypsy and traveller lifestyle in that sense, but currently, because there are no sites or there's no availability for sites currently, are living in a way that doesn't feel like community to them and doesn't feel like home. So not only are we addressing the needs that we are aware of through the assessment, there are also many people coming forward to say, actually, I've had to leave part of my culture behind and I want it back. And I think to be able to provide that lifeline back to a community and to a way of living is something very, very important, and it's something that I'm very proud to have been part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, and I think I'd like to echo what Councillor Austin said about your own contribution to this, because I know you've put an awful lot of time and thought and emotion into providing us providing to getting to this stage, and I know officers have worked really hard as well on coming up with a proposal which we were able to bring forward and council to support. Unfortunately, it's taken a very long while, and part of the reason for that is there have been 2 election periods, the most recent one in Garninge when we were ready to bring it forward, and we couldn't bring it forward during an election period due to the rules. I want to say something about the consultation process, because it has thrown up responses that we're not able to share, because that would put us in breach of our statutory duties. But also I'm aware that via social media there have been posts and that I would have to regard as threatening towards Councillor Whitehead personally, including an attempt to direct people to somewhere that they thought she lived in order to cause trouble and harass councillors, and we can't accept that. We've seen what has gone on at Swale Council recently, the appalling behaviour that went on in the council chamber, and we ought to make a statement that that kind of behaviour is completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable in Swale when it takes place in the council chamber, and it's absolutely unacceptable when it's done from the privacy of a bedroom with somebody on a computer who's threatening a councillor who's putting in hours every week, many hours every week, in order to serve the community. And I think those people are despicable, and they should be held in contempt by all of us. Members, discussion on this subject? Okay. Well, I think we have reached a proposal that we can all support. It's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8 is Phase 3 of the Football Foundation's Hubs programme for the Jackie Baker's Recreation Ground. Councillor Alban.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. The initial commitment, let me start that. The initial commitment to this project by the council followed a public petition and a December 2023 cabinet decision to investigate the options available for future improvements to Jackie Baker's. The decision requested officers explore the potential for new sporting facilities, a new pavilion with community facilities, and a new car park to reduce parking on the adjacent residential roads by visitors to the recreation ground. The Football Foundation, Sports England and other national governing bodies of sport have stated that Thanet is a priority area for them. A key principle of the Football Foundation Hubs programme is community engagement to understand local needs, with a focus on supporting lower socio-economic groups, women and girls, disabled people, people with long-term health conditions, and ethnically diverse communities. The Thanet Local Football Facilities Plan, produced jointly by the Football Association and the Football Foundation, identifies a need for at least 2, but ideally 3, new 11v11 floodlit artificial grass pitches and a new community pavilion at the site. The council successfully submitted an expression of interest, which is phase 1 of the Hubs programme, to the Football Foundation in May of this year, and progressed to phase 2 in June this year. Phase 2 was a feasibility study of the project. This was undertaken by FMG Consulting Limited on behalf of the Football Foundation, not on behalf of the council. The study was 100% funded by the Football Foundation and is owned by them. FMG presented the findings of the study to the Football Foundation Board in October this year. The council was then invited to progress to phase 3 of the Hubs programme by the Football Foundation. Phase 3 is an outline designed to ensure a brief and concept design for the project is produced ready for a more detailed design and planning application. If the council agrees to continue to phase 3, it will be responsible for undertaking community engagement and producing the outline design. The Football Foundation are offering the council a grant of up to £200,000 to cover 60% of the costs of of completion phase 3. The council will need to fund 40% of the cost of completing phase 3, and this can be up to £133,000. The total potential spend of £333,000 for phase 3 requires a key decision from Cabinet. As part of this decision, Cabinet is to consider whether to recommend to Council for approval an additional £133,000 budget to be included within the revenue to be funded from Section 106 receipts. If the project proceeds to full capital funding and construction, a 3-pitch site is estimated to be a £10 million project, with a £6 million grant coming from the Football Foundation for 60% of the project costs, with the council requiring to fund £4 million in match funding for 40% of the project costs. As part of the project, the council are required to have an internal project manager in place. For this reason, the Cabinet is being asked to approve the recruitment of a sports facilities project manager for a fixed term contract until March the 31st, 2028, with costs funded from the project budget. I therefore ask Cabinet to approve the following recommendations. The progression to phase 3 of the Football Foundation Hubs programme for Jackie Baker's Recreation Ground, which will produce an outline design for the site at a cost of £333,000. The acceptance of a grant up to £200,000 from the Football Foundation to pay for 60% of the cost of undertaking phase 3. Funding by the council of up to £133,000 to pay for 40% of the cost of undertaking phase 3. The recruitment of a sports facilities project manager on a fixed term contract until the 31st of March 2028 to provide project management resources to this key council project. The cost of this post shall be assigned to the project and funded from within its budget. And lastly, to recommend to council for approval an additional £133,000 budget to be included within the revenue to be funded from the Section 106 receipts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. You have a seconder? Councillor Keane, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Alban. This is excellent news, really very supportive of it. Our only concern, I think, is that if we're putting our Section 106 money into this, is there going to be enough of that and enough officer time in future to support the development of various of our other leisure facilities around Thanet? We don't want to see those neglected as this becomes a centre of excellence.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Austin. I understand that. I can't really answer that question, except to say that this helps this project to get off the ground, and we start. So we're looking for completion in 2020, end of 2027, or towards 2028. Sorry. As far as other areas, then those will be specifically related to a planning application and would have to be spent within that application's process. So for this is like basically a one-off at the present time. Should there be anything different, then we will have to come back to Cabinet and to Council. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Councillor Alban, about Section 106 money and the specificity of it. You can't... You have to allocate the contributions in relation to the development to which the Section 106 money is attached. You can't go and spend it somewhere else in the district just because you feel like it. So I don't think that's a risk. I mean, I did notice that there were lots of questions about this, about other sports, about the impacts and all the issues around it, overview and scrutiny, all of which were answered by Mr. Marmo, which I think was important. It was a good exercise in teasing out some of the things which aren't in the report. You know, I think that there were good answers for all of them. I really welcome this, and I think as with the pavilion, which was recently opened at Jackie Baker's, it's really great to see something which has bubbled up in the community, which has been strongly articulated and argued by the ward councillors, who've taken a real leading role in this, which Councillor Alban has actively supported, and which I know Mr Marmo has put a lot of time and effort into it, and we're very lucky to have his expertise in terms of bringing in this kind of funding and doing this kind of work. All of the elements have come together to produce this, and I have to contrast it with the previous 4 years when the councillors for Northwood didn't really seem to achieve very much for members in Northwood as far as I could see. But we've got a working system here where what the public want is flowing through the councillors into the council and delivering outcomes. That's exactly how local democracy should work. Any other comments, members? Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. I'm just really pleased to see the focus on the groups facing inequalities and how they're being included in it. And I think that will marry up really well with the active Thanet strategy, which is coming forward soon.
Councillor Bright.
Yeah, and I agree with pretty much everything everyone said. But the other thing that I wanted to note as well is it's really important to me that we look beyond our seafronts as well. It's very easy to focus all of our efforts on the most visible areas that look good in a brochure, etc. It's really good that we're looking at a resource that's outside of our town centres, targeting a community that's not given a lot of support generally. So really pleased with this.
And I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Jackie Baker's is a really central location, being adjacent to Westwood Cross, and it offers opportunities for people to come from all over Thanet to use. But we are delivering projects in other areas and other parts of Thanet, as we've talked about before, including at the Garlands Recreation Ground with Ramsgate Football Club, and I'm sure there'll be other similar schemes that will come forward in the future.
Can I come back to you?
You can, Councillor Alban.
Thank you. I just think it's important as well, because I just wanted that introduction into where we are. But this morning, with Mr Marmo and other officers, we had a meeting with what we've created a strategic group, and that includes the Royal Harbour School, and I think that's been a really happy and important part of this, is that we're now working with the school, and the school are happy for this to go ahead, because it then gives them, we will then be able to help the school as well, and it means there will be, hopefully we get the parking will be in the school, which is not used at weekends, and there's all those kind of things. So for me, that's one of the best things is the community are taking place in this, and a massive important part of it is going to be when we go out to consultation with residents to see what the residents come back with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. That's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 9, which is the Port of Ramsgate Future Delivery Project Decisions, which is me. At Cabinet in June, a decision was made to direct officers to develop a schedule of high-level strategic options for the future of the Port of Ramsgate. This report provides an update on that work and makes a total of 6 recommendations relating to next steps to deliver the best possible outcome for the port. The Council has faced recurring financial losses as a result of the underutilisation of the port since scheduled cross-channel services ceased in 2013. The lack of commercial income has led to a structural deficit and underinvestment in critical infrastructure. The recent attempt to secure a concession operator was abandoned in January 2025, which was ultimately due to the circa £10 million gap between the available funding and the requirement for essential infrastructure investment. I will repeat again, because it is consistently misrepresented, that the Council did not seek to secure a ferry operator in this particular process. And while the demand to use the port is obviously a relevant factor for potential operators, the funding gap is about infrastructure and tells us nothing definitive about current and future demand. So the port delivery project has 3 strategic objectives: to end the revenue deficit position, to deliver a sustainable long-term solution that removes financial and legal risk from the Council, and to achieve this with no local financial contributions towards capital costs. The 6 recommendations in this report are all well aligned with these objectives. The report updates on the option assessment work undertaken by officers since June and provides outline professional views on each. The report also updates on continuing conversations with the government in pursuit of a suitable solution for the site. The first 2 of the 6 recommendations propose that a harbour revision order is progressed to remove the existing open port duty associated with the roll-on, roll-off or ro-ro berths at the port. This is a relatively long legal process which could take 4 years to complete. The Council has a legal obligation to keep the port accessible for use and allow the shipping and unshipping of goods and the embarking disembarking of passengers upon payment of fees. The lack of sufficient income at the port over the last 12 years has resulted in a lack of funding to invest in infrastructure. This has left the Council in a position where it cannot comply with that duty. A harbour revision order is therefore proposed with the objective of removing the duty and the associated legal risk. Recommendation 3 proposes that a focus is placed on short-term income opportunities. That means using the available land to generate income while a longer-term solution is progressed. It's important to be realistic that there are no quick fixes when it comes to finding a sustainable long-term solution for the port. Any permanent solution is likely to include a further harbour revision order to change the statutory harbour limits or to remove the Council as the statutory harbour authority. Given that the process takes so long, licences for land or short-term leases that help to address the revenue deficit in the meantime are proposed as an important part of the way forward. Recommendations 4 and 5 are concerned with the selection of high-level options for further consideration. 9 options were listed in the Cabinet report in June, and an additional option is introduced by this report, bringing the total number to 10. The report briefly describes the potential offered by each of the options, along with the risks and limitations associated with each. We've tried hard as a Council for some considerable time to improve the trading position of the port. Different party administrations have shared an ambition to pursue options to reopen channel crossings. Most recently, this has been via concession model, although previously it was by direct negotiation with ferry operators. This has had a revenue cost which is included in the information contained in Appendix 2 on long-term financial performance. But that expenditure was necessary to pursue a solution and meet the aim of making the port sustainable in the long term. The process to date has helped to inform the recent option scoping work. This has led to the recommendation in this report to discount 6 of the options set out in June and to further develop the remaining 4 options. These 4 options are all focused on long lease or freehold disposal of the port site, either with or without a requirement to retain a functioning port. This report does not seek a final decision on a disposal itself, but does propose that disposal type solutions are further developed and brought back to Cabinet. The final recommendation in the report seeks direction from Cabinet about whether or not to include the Royal Harbour as well as the port in the scoping of disposal type options. The port and harbour are operated by the Council as a single statutory harbour authority. The annual accounts reflect the combined position for both sites as is required by statute. The average position is a loss of £416,000 over the last 6 financial years. In contrast to that, the harbour generates a modest average surplus of £120,000 when considered in isolation. However, the scale of this surplus may not be sufficient alone to cover the level of long-term infrastructure reinvestment required. However, there are other non-financial factors to consider when talking about the future of the Royal Harbour, and we understand the deep maritime history tied to Ramsgate. The need to identify challenges that could arise from splitting control of the port and harbour is understood by Cabinet, but this does not mean we would support selling or leasing the harbour, as we recognise how integral it is to Ramsgate as a community asset. It is, however, our responsibility as the political leadership to give officers a clear steer on such an issue, which is why this is included in the report. Lastly, the report also updates on the position regarding aggregates. In July, the company entered into a temporary licence for an additional 2 acres of land. This has allowed increased aggregate storage and more aggregate vessel arrivals. The additional vessel movements, the increased aggregate volume and the additional rent have all helped to offset the revenue deficit position this year. As mentioned in the report, Bretts have also commenced processing of aggregate on the site. This is a permitted activity under the Environmental Permitting Regulations 2016. The Council is the regulator for this permit, and an application has been received and is being processed in accordance with those regulations. In the meantime, voluntary mitigations are in place during the permit determination period. In summary, this report sets out in detail the current position regarding the port. The report proposes actions to mitigate legal risk, maximise short-term income and makes recommendations to give officers clear direction on the long-term future of the site. Now, I'm going to read the recommendations because I think it's important to put them into the record and also to deal with the issue in Recommendation 6. Recommendation 1 is that Cabinet approve the proposal to prepare and submit a harbour revision order to remove the open port duty associated with the ro-ro berths and associated land at the Port of Ramsgate as set out in Section 6. A working draft of the HRO and an accompanying draft port plan can be found at Appendix 4 and 5 of this report. Recommendation 2 is that Cabinet gives delegated authority to the Director of Environment to refine and complete the drafting of a harbour revision order and the accompanying port plan based on the drafts appended to this report and to submit the HRO application to the Marine Management Organisation early in 2026 to formally commence the harbour revision order process. Recommendation 3 is that Cabinet approves the proposal to pursue and secure short-term income opportunities circa 1 to 4 years as described in Section 7. Recommendation 4 is that Cabinet approves the proposal to discount 6 of the high-level options, these being options 2A, 2B, 3, 4A, 4B and 4C from Table 1 in Appendix 1. Recommendation 5 is that Cabinet approves the proposal for officers to develop leasehold or freehold disposal options 1A, 1B, 1C and 1D, further for consideration at a future meeting of Cabinet. And recommendation 6 is that Cabinet considers the content of this report with respect to the Royal Harbour and specifically Section 8 of the report on financial performance and decides whether or not officers should consider the Royal Harbour in potential long lease or freehold disposal options as part of the next stage of this project. And I'm going to move as part of that Cabinet instructs officers not to consider the Royal Harbour as part of that disposal discussion. And I so move. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bright, thank you. And give my voice a rest. We can hear from Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Well. Yeah. It's a funny time of year, actually, because in some ways we should be hearing the Hallelujah chorus that finally people are accepting that the parrot's dead, as we've discussed previously. I think there's plenty to be said, and I know colleagues of mine have got comments they want to make, and the situation is well understood. So maybe we're at a turning point here where we can actually stop squandering money on fantasy ferries and look for a better use and the best possible use for that land. And I would like some form of confirmation that we can... Let's take the recommendations that have been made many a time, and as I say, I'm conscious of not taking away from anything anyone else wants to say, but it's been stated that there are better alternatives, and we have a duty, particularly in the situation this council's in financially, to get the maximum possible yield. That isn't going to be necessarily through filthy commercial operations, but a mixed use development is well known to be probably, but needs discussion. So what I'd like is confirmation that this will lead to a broad discussion of all options rather than us falling down a hole. And with regard to Brett's, by the way, I don't believe that they are acting legally because it ignores the Town and Country EIA regulations of 2017. And before any permit for dust is considered, the development requires permission, which should have an EIA screening option. There are a lot of issues with what's going on down there. It flies completely in the face of everything that the community has been concerned with for years. I've stated this, but I do believe that we need to have a very serious look at Brett's, because what price good faith? If we're supposed to be negotiating with them over a better option, and let's bear in mind that whatever meterage is achieved there, it pales into insignificance compared to the potential meterage income of a mixed-use development. Consequently, why are we condoning this? Because if they had any respect or intended to behave, not only would they have not breached the previous conditions, they'd be looking to establish themselves as a credible and decent person to do business with, instead of riding roughshod over everything and ignoring the legal requirements. And there are legal requirements because of the location of the port with regard to the pollutants being generated there. And I understand that there's a different regulator for the dust compared to the noise and so on, but it's just no good faith. And please, can we take this as a turning point to perhaps do the right thing for the people of Ramsgate and the authority in terms of revenue. But let's close the black hole, and hallelujah for the fact that finally we're accepting the fact that ferries are a fantasy.
Yeah, I don't think we are accepting that ferries are a fantasy, Councillor Davis. What we're saying is that the infrastructure is not in a state to receive ferries, and we as a local authority are not in a position to invest in the infrastructure to change that. And the attempts that we've made to put in place a system which would have allowed third parties to invest along with the grant has failed. We're now opening the door to other options. I think Mr Humber might want to comment on the legality of the Brett's operation, because I think that's important that we get the facts straight on that.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So Brett's, as we know, are processing aggregate on site. They are complying with voluntary mitigations whilst so a permit application has been submitted, and that will be determined by the Council's environmental health team. If a permit is granted, then that will be put on the public register. That will look at dust, and the dust assessment has been carried out. Noise is handled separately as a statutory nuisance, so that's not part of that permit, but dust is. Brett's are operating their concrete batching plant has a permit, so they have a permit to do that. You mentioned EIA regulations, so the berth that was installed a couple of years ago, there was an environmental impact assessment process on that produced an environmental statement for the berth. Brett's are an existing entity at the port, so they don't need an environmental impact assessment for what they're doing. But the permitting part is the application that they have put in for permit for the processing. So that is the correct route in terms of determining whether that processing is appropriate.
Thank you, Mr Humber. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Leader. In March 2019, it was agreed by councillors to no longer fund keeping the port ready to receive ships. The Cabinet Member for Financial Services said that hopes of a ferry service have faded and that a master plan should be developed. In 2019, £40,000 was put aside for a comprehensive feasibility study. It was intended to be the first part of a two-stage process forming an inclusive master plan. As I've said previously, so much money has been wasted on the port, which would have paid for the second part of the master plan. We should be looking at other ports and harbours like Sovereign Harbour in Eastbourne, which is a thriving area, encouraging holidaymakers and residents. I hope it will be agreed that a maritime village will be a viable option for Ramsgate. Thank you and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. I think I'll leave that to stand. Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Leader. I understand the position that the administration finds itself in, and I think that it has been previously said by my colleague, Councillor Pugh, that this position and this whole process has been almost a joint venture across administrations, and I think it would almost be wrong to call you out on certain specifics, because equally I think under our administration we made those choices as well. But the question that I would like to ask is more directly around given the fact there is ongoing levelling up funding commitments and other regeneration projects around the port of Ramsgate, how will the proposed plan and future plans ensure the continuity of these investments and support the wider economic growth? Thank you.
Well, I think that we know that the Green Campus is going forward, and we know, so therefore we're in a position to factor it into our plans. I mean, it does require planning consent, I think, but subject to that, obviously it will be something that Mr. Humber is going to factor into the further work that he does on the port. Do you want to add anything to that, Mr. Humber?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely it needs to dovetail with other things that are going on. So, you know, what's happening at the Royal Harbour, and particularly the port site and the Green Campus plans at the port. The options that are set out for further, you know, for further work, those disposal options via long lease or via freehold, with or without a requirement for it to be working as a port. You know, those options, things like the red line, you know, i.e. the red line around the area of land that would be of interest, you know, those things are still to be determined. So I think, you know, there's plenty of flexibility and scope, and it's important that, you know, we take time to get this right and make sure that it considers the port and harbour and the you know, the various businesses and the various activities around it.
And I should say that I appreciate Councillor Cupp acknowledging that this has been the view of both Labour and Conservative administrations, that we should proceed down this route. I do think that perhaps the view is slightly different when you're occupying this chair, as the previous Conservative leader occupied this chair, and you're not just obsessed with removing Brett's, which seems to be the objective of some of our councillors. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. Generally, we welcome this report. We have got to the end of the line, I think, with many of the possibilities that have been explored, and it's good to be looking more broadly now at different possible ways of running things at the port. We're pleased that the harbour is being protected. It is massively loved, but also has huge potential, I think, for further income generation for the council and for further facilities for the public and visitors. So we're very keen to see what might happen there. We also know that residents and traders have many good ideas which have fed into previous consultations and may feed into future discussions, particularly those people who are trading around the harbour at the moment. There are many of them who have some good suggestions that may be worth taking on board. We talked under Jackie Baker's about how we started off from a proposal by residents, and good things have happened as a result of listening to that. So I think we need to be mindful about the possibility there as well. With regard to Brett's, I don't think this group is interested in getting rid of Brett's, but we are interested in making sure that Brett's do things properly and pay properly for the land that they use. And we've had discussions separately with Mr. Humber about residents who are reporting to us that the time limits are not being observed, the dust suppression is not happening, the permit was applied for after the screening started, etc., etc. We'll leave that with Mr. Humber, that delightful job to send people to check those things. But certainly there are residents who are most unhappy. There are some residents who are never going to be happy while Brett's are there. We recognise that. But what we're concerned about in our group is to make sure that they are operating legally and that they are operating without environmental damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I mean, I may have mistakenly assumed one of those residents was in your group, but that's probably my mistake. I think we all agree that Brett's need to pay the appropriate amount for the land that they occupy and the activity that they carry out down there, and that they need to abide by all the proper processes, and the council will ensure that they do. I do think that spills over into a level of scepticism about anything they do, because there are a group of people who would like to remove all industrial use on the port site, which is not where this council is or has been. Maybe where some opposition members are, but it's not where this council is currently. We're going to look at the options as we've set out. I think there is a bit of a difference between, if I may, between a local recreation ground, even one which is probably strategic for the district, and a large industrial port site in terms of community involvement and what the community might bring forward in relation to it. But absolutely, we'll listen to any ideas that come forward. Why wouldn't we? Members, Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think we can be too parochial about this. So, you know, we're all duty holders, Port and Harbour duty holders. So we've had those conversations with the consultant, we've had the conversations with the harbour master. And I think there is a short-term goal here and there's a long-term goal. The short-term goal, as I see it, I might be reading this totally wrong, but the short-term goal is to mitigate the financial risk to this council of not being through the open port duty. The longer-term goal, and this is where I think members of the opposition have kind of gone off on one slightly, is we're not at the end of the line, and no one's saying the parrot is dead. We're just about to head into, firstly, local government reorganisation, and the scale of the council we will be joining is far larger than the council that we're in now, and is far more able to absorb the strength of the opportunity that a port might offer. We're also looking at devolution in terms of in terms of having a strategic authority. So there will be a Mayor of Kent, they will have a strategic opinion, and whatever happens to the port will be linked to airports, will be linked to transport more generally and commerce more generally. We're just about to have the most expensive tunnel in the history of the planet open 20, 30 miles up the road. This is all going to have an impact and it's all going to be joined up strategically. I don't think the parrot is dead. I think there is an opportunity here. We just don't know what it is yet, and but we need to be very, very mindful that any decision we make now is long term, not short term. And making decisions for a council that's only going to be around for a couple more years is not the best strategic thinking.
No, but we do need to make progress in certain areas, including the Harbour Revision Order. For the second time this evening, I've forgotten Councillor Fellows. Apologies. I'm going to go back to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I'll keep it brief. I mean, I just wanted to come and ask a couple of questions on the report. I mean, I welcome the report, but it's just unclear if that was going to come to scrutiny as yet. I mean, I just want to be clear that these are personal comments and questions and not from any partisan position. A few years ago, I can't remember exactly when, I think it was 2021, 22, when we were told there was an opportunity to reopen the port and bring the ferries back. I mean, I was part of the administration then, but there was total cross-party support. And it was the same when the administration passed over to the current one. It was now or never, we were told. We have the grant money, so let's try and go for it. I think everyone was up for it at the time. I don't believe we ever thought that if the tendering process failed, then the finances of this council would have been put at risk as they are now. I'm not sure when that became clear. The tendering offering was clearly not attractive enough to suck anyone in to make a bid for it. I believe it was a 15 or 20 year lease. I can't remember exactly what it was at the time. But now one of the options on the table is to dispose of the freehold of the port. I'd like to ask, would it not have made the offering to potential bidders more attractive back then if we could have offered it the freehold back then? Why did we just stick to the lease agreement that was offered and not offer the freehold alternative as well, if we can now? On the agenda tonight is a proposal to sell off some assets, small and modest assets that bring in an income to the council. The opposite of asset is liability, I believe. One might question which one the port is. Is it an asset or is it a liability? We have to make our own minds on that. Personally, I think it's time to let someone else take it on, try and turn it round. It's been a failure for many years and we have run out of ideas. With the right level of investment, it could possibly provide housing, business opportunities or previously mooted mixed-use development. The now or never plan never worked. I think it's time to add it to the asset disposal list and try and recoup some badly needed funds this council needs. I think tinkering around selling off memorial gardens and closed down toilets is not going to solve the black hole that this council seems to be looking into. So let's see if we can raise the millions it's reported we now need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. I don't necessarily accept the connection. I understand there's a difference in scale between the port and some of the assets that we've discussed earlier, but I think we need to look at the best ownership for those assets in parallel with anything we're doing in the port. You have a view about Rossetti Gardens, which I respect. A lot of those assets on that list may well be better better utilised in other ownership than in the ownership of the council, and indeed it isn't clear why the council owns some of them, so I think we ought to be considering those, as we have done earlier this evening. Mr Humber, do you want to talk about why freehold disposal wasn't on the table earlier?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. If we go back to 2023, when March 2023, when the report proposed a hybrid multi-use model and a concession agreement, that was based on legal advice that said the concession model offered the lowest legal, regulatory, commercial risk. That was set out in that report, and that was, one of the key reasons why that option was pursued. So we went that route. It didn't work. I think what I've set out certainly in subsequent reports is around the financial gap, which wasn't known then, and it's that reason principally that the concession model didn't work, the duration of the concession and the financial gap. So at the time, all options, including disposal, were considered. We got good legal advice on that, and that was the best option available at the time. We are now in a position where we know that we've had to abandon that process as set out in the report in June this year and this report, and we are now refining those options and looking at disposal as a result of that process that we've gone through.
Thanks, and I do agree with what Councillor Bright has said around the future under a unitary authority. I don't think we'd be in the place that we are now if we had the financial spending power of a unitary authority, or indeed a county council. And we all know the county council has its own challenges, and one of those challenges is the port tunnel, which is going to have to be resolved one way or another. Well, it's going to have to be resolved one way. They're going to have to fix it, basically, or the new unitary authority is going to have to fix it, because it can't possibly be in a situation where Military Road becomes the main access to that area, whatever it's used for in future. So that's something that's got to be resolved. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. It does feel slightly like we've been living in parrot metaphors for a few years now, which means I will continue it and point out that the parrot in question has been starved for multiple years. This is, without doubt, nationally significant infrastructure. And to build on the point that Councillor Everett made, to have nationally significant infrastructure sitting with what is comparatively a very small district council is an extremely unusual situation, and one that hasn't been sustainable. I think that it is something that requires national intervention, and I have put a not insignificant amount of effort into trying to ensure that that happens, because I do believe that many of the issues that we have faced around the port are simply that nationally significant infrastructure has been placed within the wrong realm. This is something that is significant for us as a country, it is significant for us as a council, but it has a much wider meaning and a much wider strategic significance. So, yeah, I'm very much sticking with the metaphor of the starved parrot rather than the dead one.
Councillor Alban?
Yeah, I understand, Chair, that a flock of Norwegian blues has been seen in Oslo. That's all I can say, so the parrot isn't dead. That's
Okay. I just think we ought to talk a little bit about the harbour. I mean, I think the harbour is obviously one of the most significant assets that we have as a district, not just for Ramsgate, but for Thanet as a whole. And to my mind, it's essential that it remains in the ownership of the local authority, whatever the local authority is in future. But we do have to recognise that, given its listed status and its historic status, it is a challenging structure of itself, and it does require lots of investment, and that's going to be a challenge for the future authority going forward. As much as we have more substantial issues with the port, I think that attachment, that sense of community ownership doesn't necessarily exist in the port in the same way that it does in the harbour. I think officers are quite right to bring forward a discussion about the complications of separating the port and the harbour, but my view has always been that this council should not be disposing of something which is so central to the identity of Ramsgate, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity tonight that we can clarify that. Members, that's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And thank you everyone for a useful discussion on that, I think. If we move on to item 10, which is the corporate performance report, which combines quarter one and quarter two usefully. So obviously it's good practice for councils to provide transparent oversight of how they're performing in key services, helps to demonstrate to local people that the things they care about are being prioritised and provides a tool for accountability. This report provides members of the Cabinet with the review of the Council's corporate performance under the newly adopted Performance Management Framework, which was approved by Cabinet on the 25th of September. As part of this framework, the Council has agreed to track progress against 40 corporate performance indicators. They don't cover every aspect of the Council's services, but they provide an overview of progress against the 5 priorities within the corporate plan. Corporate performance will be presented to Cabinet and then subsequently to the Overview and Scrutiny panel every quarter. As this is the first time of reporting against the new indicators, data for both quarter one, the period from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, and quarter two, 1st of July to the 30th of September is provided. This is to enable more meaningful comparison and benchmarking. At Annex 1, 5 tables are presented against each of the corporate priorities. They set out the name and description of the indicator, how frequently they're monitored, whether there is a target, and if so, what that is, and if it's to be monitored according to trend, and therefore what the expected trend should be, and whether we're meeting this. Where indicators are monitored quarterly or more frequently, data has been provided for both quarter one and quarter two. There's some written context to explain the performance, and graphs are also provided in section 3. After consideration by the Cabinet this evening, this report will progress to the Overview and Scrutiny panel for consideration at their meeting on the 15th of January. I move that Cabinet notes the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Alban. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Davis, I think.
What I wanted to recognise, and as I say, apologies, that was a notification. What I think we should recognise is the amount of positive movement in this, given the difficulties that this council faces, particularly with regard to recruitment and short staffing and everything. And whilst, as I say, quick to criticise, but also quick to praise, and what I notice is that there are improvements on an awful lot of the areas on the dashboards, which, again, shows the diligence of the officers concerned and the work that's being done. And I just wanted to recognise that because, again, we talk a lot about the difficulties, but it should be recognised that the trends are generally pretty good there. There's 1 or 2 areas which are clearly down to lack of staff on the waste side of things. But I do want to recognise and just say that it's a very good report and again, this structure and this dashboard enables us to have a look and actually see and understand what we're being fed. But credit to all concerned for keeping it together in difficult times.
Thank you.
Apologies for the distraction.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davis. I'm sorry to hear about your news. I think what you said does give me the opportunity to say that I have a huge amount of confidence in our senior managers. I think we have a really good team of senior managers, and I think that's reflected in the outputs that we're seeing in this report. There's always more to do. I'm sure there are individual areas that can be picked up and explored. Perhaps when this goes to scrutiny, that might be the more appropriate occasion to do it. I'm going to call in Councillor Austin. You look as if you're worried that you're not going to be called.
No, I'm just trying to see you.
Oh, okay. I'll call you in now, Councillor Austin.
I just wanted to echo really what Councillor Davis said. I really like the dashboard format, the graphs and so on. It's really clear to see. The only suggestion I would make is there are some areas where there are percentages, and it would be useful also to have numbers, particularly in the last section around resident complaints and so on. It's good to see that we've got 86.65% of complaints responded to within the service standard, but is that 2 complaints or 250 complaints? It would be useful to know. But this is, it's overall very encouraging and a really useful format to be able to see the information in. So thanks to everybody who's worked on that.
I'm sure that you're being heard, and that's something that we'll consider and take into account in future reports. And as I say, we can look at the individual metrics, perhaps overview and scrutiny, or at your leisure at home. You know. But certainly, it's useful information. Members, any comments, Councillor Bright?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in just to talk about the purpose of measurement as well, because I think it's really good to be able to sit here as a cabinet member and say, look how great we're doing on everything, but it's also really good to be able to identify where the needle hasn't moved in maybe the direction we want or as much as we would have liked or whatever, because it then allows us obviously to ask questions, provide of officers, get answers with better context, and actually if a service isn't doing what it should, to think about solutions to making that. And I completely agree that officers have been incredibly supportive, and my one question on context got an answer that I really liked. So I'm really pleased with this.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank officers for that report and the work that's gone into it. It's moved and seconded to note, I think. So is that agreed, members? Thank you. Item 11, the only item without anyone speaking under 20.1 tonight, is the Partnership 1 business plan. For approval. So this is the inaugural business plan for Partnership 1, our newly established local authority trading company, co-owned with Canterbury and Dover. The plan focuses on stability for our core revenues, benefits and customer service functions. It's financially prudent, projecting a surplus in its first year, and is governed by a contract with 18 specific performance targets and financial penalties for any failures to deliver. Thanet's interests are strictly protected through 2 layers of oversight. Our Section 151 officer manages the operational contracts, and our head of property, Andrea Plant, sits directly on the company board as a director. This structure secures the vital income collection we need while providing a vehicle to return future trading surpluses to the council. Some of you may have had the opportunity to visit Partnership 1's offices upstairs, which are very nice. I know that they're very pleased with them. I therefore move the recommendations to approve the Partnership 1 business plan for 25-26 and to note the 3-year strategic plan. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Keane. Any discussion, members? Okay, that's agreed. Thank you. The remaining item is the Pride in Place programme grant. As I said at the start of the meeting, I shall be vacating the chair for this item as I'm a member of the Ramsgate Neighbourship Board. I shall also be going home. So I wish you an enjoyable rest of the evening and, of course, a very good Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I shall pass over to my esteemed colleague, Councillor Whitehead. See you next year.
I would like it noted that I'm on the wrong side and this is all very confusing. So item 12, we have the Pride in Place programme grant, which will be introduced by Councillor Duckworth. And the recommendations for this item are that we ratify the decision by the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board to allocate £535,000 from the Pride in Place programme funding to secure the ownership of the Ramsgate Youth Centre, to approve the forward funding of the grant repayable from the Ramsgate Pride in Place programme as set out in the table at 5.5, to delegate authority to the Director of Place in consultation with the Leader of the Council and Interim Chair of the Board to finalise the terms of the grant agreement including detailed grant conditions and clawback arrangements in line with the issues raised in section 5.9. And I would just like to say that I'm very aware how much work has gone into this from officers and from Councillor Everett and from Cabinet in general. This is a huge item for our local community. It's a huge item for Ramsgate, and it's a privilege to be able to support something that is this significant for us. So I'd like to pass over to Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair. On 28th of November, the Council submitted the Ramsgate Pride in Place programme 10-year vision and regeneration plan on behalf of the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board. The plan includes strategic priority for Ramsgate of investing in our young people. The report being presented this evening on behalf of the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board is delivering directly against this strategic priority. This report concerns a vital decision made by the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board on Friday the 12th of December to secure a core community asset, the Ramsgate Youth Centre, in perpetuity for youth services. This is a powerful demonstration of the Pride in Place programme in action. The Board has agreed to allocate a capital grant of £535,000 from the Pride in Place programme funding to Pie Factory Music to purchase the site from Kent County Council. This permanent arrangement is the most sustainable option to safeguard these crucial youth services, which are otherwise at risk of being significantly impacted. The purpose of this report today is twofold, reflecting the Council's role as accountable body for the programme. One, to ratify the Neighbourhood Board's decision, confirming it adheres to all financial and legal procedures. Two, to approve the forward funding of the grant. Due to an urgent deadline set by Kent County Council, purchase must be completed before the official Pride in Place programme capital allocations begin next April. We propose forward funding this £535,000 from our existing local regeneration fund balances, which will be fully repaid once the Pride in Place funds are received. This mechanism has been internally validated and ensures the Council faces no long-term pressure. This is a significant opportunity, an immediate and impactful intervention to secure a long-term step change for Ramsgate's young people, backed by robust legal protections, including a 20-year charge on the property to safeguard this public investment. I commend the recommendations to Cabinet for your ratification and approval.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Do we have members under 20.1?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and seconded by Councillor Alban for a change. Speakers under 20.1, I think we have Councillor Davis first. Thank you.
I'm going to finish by putting you all into shock, because on the second item I'm going to congratulate all concerned. It was a shame it had to take as long as it did, but I'm glad that a solution has been found. And I think what we have to say, we talk about Ramsgate a lot, and as a Ramsgate councillor I'm very happy about that, but Pie Factory does touch the whole community and quite a large halo area in many ways, in terms of rehabilitation as well as just provide, and I think it's a vital resource. I look forward to the days of a unitary instead of the nonsense we've had to put up with between KCC and others, and I just think that the good work that PI do is perhaps under not this council and its members aren't always aware, depending on where they're located, of actually how good they are and what they do. And I wonder if at some point we could perhaps have a session and an update as to that, and then people will understand the importance of what this has done. But given, and also it must be a great relief for Zoe and the team, because obviously they've lived with this for a long time. So just to finish on a positive note, well done all, and I think it's a relief, because I think it's the only proper structured youth facility we've got on the island now, isn't it? So to preserve that is credit to all. Let's see if we can't find a way to help them expand what they do, perhaps. And I was going to suggest that we might go to the KCC members for their combined members grant, but apparently it's been slashed to next to nothing. So, but they might like to help ongoing. Anyway, but well done all, and a very Merry Christmas.
Councillor Duckworth, would you like to respond to Councillor Davis? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davis. And I was very pleased to welcome Pie Factory to the Community Champions Conference last year and to learn all about their work. And yeah, their tendrils definitely reach out into many parts of Thanet. So thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. And once again, I'm surprised to find myself agreeing with Councillor Davis. This is brilliant news. We are absolutely delighted in Ramsgate and members across the district. They do quite exceptional work at the Pie Factory. Report that we funded through Ramsgate Town Council looked at the amount of benefit, just in financial terms, that comes to the area from every pound that's spent on the Pie Factory. And I can't remember the exact figures, but it was significant. And it's going to make so much difference to young people, but also I think to the wider community to be able to retain that facility. I bumped into Ms Karasik at the weekend and she was full of praise for officers and members who have supported this, recognised the enormous amount of work that had gone on to get this over the line at the right time, and we are all immensely grateful. It's fantastic news. Well done everybody and happy Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Councillor Duckworth, would you like to respond?
I know, I think we're just all agreeing, so yeah.
It's lovely to have us all agreeing for the last item. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on 20.1? Thank you. Just to sum up, I would like to echo... Oh, no. Councillor Bright.
Thank you. Don't forget about us. I just one point of correction. The Pavilion Youth Club in Broadstairs is totally youth focused and does great work, but this is about Pie Factory. And I was lucky enough last year to see a couple of the members of Pie Factory perform in concert. When I say they were good, I kind of mean it genuinely good. They were proper musicians, which is fantastic to see in this area. And I don't think the value of the work that the staff and the organisation at Pie Factory do for our young people can be overstated. We have got an incredibly serious mental health crisis amongst our young people in this country. And we need, as councillors, to demonstrate that we care about that. And I don't think successive administrations at KCC have done nearly enough. In fact, they've done the opposite. They've shown that they don't care about our young people, particularly here in Thanet. And I'd also welcome, that's what's another reason why we should welcome the move away from a Kent County Council covering all of our services, because you just see the inequality across the county. I finally just want to thank again members of the Cabinet, Councillor Duckworth, Councillor Everett, Councillor Whitehead, and in particular the officers who have worked so quickly to turn this around. Again, Kent County Council could have been more helpful, I would imagine, than to give us literally no time to do this. So the fact that our officers have done it is incredible. So thank you very much on behalf of everyone from my corner of Thanet.
Any other contributions from Cabinet? Yeah. In line with Councillor Bright's contributions, I think the approach that we've taken as an administration is very much one of working on foundational issues and recognising that everything is connected to everything else, as Councillor Austin mentioned previously. And this is not simply about a single provision. This is about a web and a network of support that not only helps our young people, but also their families and the wider community around them. So again, huge thank you to officers involved, especially Ms Askew, who's done a huge amount of work. We've got tiny applause from the back there. Thank you to Councillor Duckworth and to everyone who has worked on this, and to Pie and the community for their continuing efforts to remain open and serving the community. So, recommendations. Again, members are being asked to ratify the decision by the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board to allocate £535,000 from the Pride in Place programme funding to secure the ownership of the Ramsgate Youth Centre. To approve the forward funding of the grant repayable from the Ramsgate Pride in Place programme as set out in the table at 5.5. To delegate authority to the Director of Place and Interim Chair of the Board to finalise the terms of the grant agreement, including detailed grant conditions and clawback arrangements in line with the issues raised in section 5.9. I believe we were seconded by Councillor Alban. Yep.
Just need to note that recommendation, the third recommendation has been amended.
Okay, the third recommendation has been amended to remove the section that stated in consultation with the leader of the council due to his membership of the board. So, Councillor Alban, if you could second again. Thank you. Do members agree?
Agree.
And that brings us to the end of the business for tonight's meeting. A very Merry Christmas to everybody, and I declare this meeting closed at 20:46. The live stream of this meeting will now end. Thank you.